go back to the 90s!
Boom shakalaka!
My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
My flows hit you at straight 88 miles per hour, that's enough to generate 1.21 gigawatts, son, and I'm on the run from the Libyans. It was a straight jack move for plutonium, and when they van rolls up, it's pandemonium. 1:18 a.m. at Twin Pines Mall is when I can pinpoint my total downfall. Now they say that
Greetings and salutations, it's your boy Big G, aka Nostal-Ged. I'm joined today by a very, very special guest, the one and only Robert Picardo.
Thank you very much, Gerard. It's a pleasure to be here sitting in my hallway in New York, talking to you all the way across the pond.
Amazing. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you?
Very well indeed. Thank you. How are you?
We're great, yeah. My daughter's just started back to school. Seems like the pandemic seems to be coming to a draw now, so looking on the positive side.
Good to hear. So you're not in lockdown, but you were
in
lockdown.
We're kind of in lockdown. We have certain laws where you can mix with certain people, certain households, but you can't just have a pie.
Exactly.
Yeah,
well, we're sort of in the same situation, although because of my advanced age, I have been double vaccinated. So I was able to, for the first time in a year, to see both of my adult daughters here in New York. I was able to travel for the first time in a year across the country in a plane and see my kids. So I'm in a very good mood, having recently had a little family reunion.
That's fantastic. That's brilliant. Most of our fans will know you from obviously Star Trek Voyager as the Doctor, the EMH. So can you just talk to us a little bit about back in 1995 when you first got onto Star Trek Voyager? Were you a big fan of the Star Trek franchises, or were you new to it? Were you?
When I was asked that question at my first convention after Voyager, maybe 2 or 3 episodes had aired, and they said, Robert, were you a Star Trek fan before you were cast in Voyager? And I thought, all right, I could lie now and then have to lie for the rest of my life, or I could tell the truth. So I opted for the truth, and I said, I'm sorry, but no, I wasn't a Star Trek fan. But since then, I've cast myself at the feet of the faithful. I've confessed my sin, and I have been healed. Thank you, Gene. So I've become a Star Trek fan. Shortly before I started work on Voyager, the producer sent me 10 of their favorite episodes, many of them featuring the medical arena from The Next Generation, and I was shocked and delighted by the quality of the storytelling and the performance and the visual effects and everything. So I really felt lucky. My experience with the original series when I was a little kid, I don't know why I watched Lost in Space. I guess because I had a crush on Angela Cartwright when I was 14 and she was 14. Maybe the women on Star Trek seemed impossibly old and inapproachable to me, being a full 10 years older or whatever. So in any case, I became a Star Trek fan, but I was not one when I was cast.
Voyager was my first Star Trek series that I watched back in the UK on Sky One, which is our version of Fox. What we do is, it used to be Star Trek Voyager before Pokemon and Simpsons had come on. Well, I'd come in from school and turn on Sky One, ready to watch Pokemon. Whilst I'm doing my homework, there's Voyager in the background. And after 1 or 2 episodes of it being in the background whilst I was doing my homework, I was hooked. And Voyager was my first Star Trek experience, and it still is my favorite Star Trek series, if only because it's got the best theme tune of all time, the intro song.
Oh yeah, well, we're the only Star Trek series to have their theme music win an Emmy Award, which is the most prestigious award you can win in television, because the great Jerry Goldsmith, who was primarily a feature film composer, did Voyager because he had done a number of the Star Trek feature films. So that's why our theme music is so beautiful. I had the pleasure of working with Mr. Goldsmith in a number of Joe Dante movies as well. So I have a theme. The cowboy, the character I played in Inner Space, actually has a theme written for him by the great Jerry Goldsmith, one of the treasured moments of my career.
That's insane. My wife knows at my funeral, she has to play 2 songs. at my funeral. One is the Quantum Leap theme tune, the other is the Star Trek Voyager theme tune. Those
Well,
played at my funeral.
you just told me before we rolled that you're 35 years old. So if you're thinking about your funeral, I think you should take a break from that. All right.
Look on the bright side, yeah, absolutely. Was it kind of different for your experience from the rest of the cast? Because obviously the Doctor for the first season or two, he didn't really leave the ward, that set. You know, it was just yourself and Kaz, Jennifer Leon, mostly.
Mm-hmm.
So
I used to tease the rest of the cast that I had the best shooting schedule in the show because I could only appear in sickbay or on the holodeck. But during the first season, that meant mostly just in sickbay, unless it was a special episode that featured the holodeck. And so that means they bunched all of my scenes together. So customarily, I would work 1 or at most 2 days a week, unless it was a very heavy medical show, like episode 3, Phage, when Mr. Neelix loses his lungs, which incidentally, I don't recommend that to anyone when your lungs get beamed out of your body. So that was a medical show. So that I shot several days, but usually I would shoot 1 day out of the 7-day shooting schedule. So I think that there was a certain amount of jealousy for my character. However, on the days that I shot, if I shot my whole part, I often had lots and lots of dialogue on those days. So I had to, the hardest thing about playing the Doctor early on was that because he was a computer program, I had to speak, especially if I was speaking about a medical issue, I had to speak with absolute fluency. There was no way to fumble through my lines. I had to know them as if I were reading them, frankly, because he was, in a way, he was reading straight out of his memory if he was talking about a particular disease or how to treat it. So I had to know my lines really cold and speak very, very quickly. And if it was technobabble, as Star Trek famously mixes real science and then extends from there. So I had some things that, that sounded like present day biology understanding. And then, of course, a lot of it was just made up baloney that it was extended out of that. So learning my lines was really, really well was of utmost importance. The moment my character went, I was dead.
Well, no ums, ahs, no look across, no. Like I said, most of the fans will know you from Voyager, but will also know you from, and I'm going to say this out loud, 230 movies and TV shows over 6 different decades.
Wow, I'm impressed.
That is insane. How do you feel when you hear that? 230 films.
I would have thought that I mean, since we did 174 hours of Voyager, you're not talking about. I mean, I think my hours of television exceed 250. You mean individual? Yeah. Well, then that sounds like a lot. Then yes. And many of them I've forgotten. People say we worked together on this, and I go, no, I didn't. And then it turns out they were right. So I'm at the age where some of them have jumped off the resume, as we say. Certain credits don't stay there because they're not necessarily, in retrospect, the best shows. But yes, I've been around a long time. Some of your listeners may not know that I began as a fairly successful young theater actor. I did a couple leads on Broadway in my early 20s. So by the time I went to California at age 25 to recreate my second Broadway role opposite the great Jack Lemmon, playing his son in a play, I had a considerable amount of theater experience, but not much film and television.
Is that where the singing comes from as well? Obviously, we remember you on Voyager curing Tuvok with your amazing singing.
Well, I sang, I'm like any kid who was in plays in high school. I was in a musical or two in high school, sang on stage. I sang in college in a couple of musicals. And I took 1 semester of singing classes because I love singing. It was expensive to take private classes, but I did study. And I remember my teacher very well, Benjamin Deloche, wonderful man. But I never trained seriously as a singer. And the way that I happened to sing on Voyager was really completely by mistake. I made the suggestion to one of our creator producers, Jerry Taylor. I said, I think it would be fun if when the Doctor was working in sickbay and you cut to him during the show working away, that he was playing an opera aria and listening to it, because the juxtaposition of his placid, unemotional face with this very emotional music struck me as funny. It was designed to be just that simple, that the Doctor enjoyed listening to opera. We don't know why. So I told her this, and she said, well, we're doing a lot of stuff on Deep Space Nine at the moment with Klingon opera, so now's not a good time, but we'll keep it in mind. Then 5, 6, 7 months go by, and I'd forgotten about it, and I read an early draft of a script, and I am singing opera on the holodeck, and I think I ran across the entire lot, knocked on her door and said, no, you misunderstood me. I want to listen to opera, not to sing it. And she goes, well, can't you sing? I said, well, I can sing, but I'm not an opera singer. And she said, well, try it. And if you're not any good, we'll replace your voice. And I walked out of here thinking, how did I get myself in this ridiculous mess? But I did. And I did quite well the first episode where I sing O Suave Fanciulla. I cheated and dropped out of the high note. I decided the way to get out of having to sing the high tenor note was if I suddenly decided that the woman I was singing with, the opera diva, the holographic diva, was off pitch. So the way I chickened out of the high note was to suddenly look at her like, that doesn't sound right. And that was, so that's a complete cheat. And the next time you watch the show, you'll see that instead of going, I'm supposed to go, and when I get to the, I literally bail on that note. And I go, oh, I'm not going to sing that. And so yeah, there was a certain amount of design that would hopefully hide from the audience the fact that, first of all, I'm not a tenor, I'm a baritone, and they would, take it down somewhat. But in order to still sound like the original, they couldn't bring it down too low. They had to try to keep it high. And I did all my own singing. I get asked all the time. I sing in about 5 or 6 episodes, and in all but one, I did all my own singing. But in Virtuoso, it was just too much. It was just too demanding and too high. So my voice abruptly changes about a third of the way in the episode, and the professional opera singer who taught me how to sing the other songs actually takes over for me. So I did 90% of my singing on Voyager, but the last 10%, you would not have wanted to listen to that.
Thanks for being honest. Nobody would have guessed. So I just want to do a quick rundown of what are my highlights from your career outside of Voyager. This list is brilliant. Gremlins, Inner Space, Legend, Total Recall, 21 Jump Street, The Burbs, the Tom Hanks film, which is brilliant, The Wonder Years, Dinosaurs, Batman the Animated Series, Home Improvement, Pagemaster, which is insane. I love it, Pagemaster, Cow and Chicken, Small Soldiers, Smallville, Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and Stargate SG-1.
The Grim Adventures of who?
Billy and Mandy. It was a Cartoon Network cartoon series. Is that one slipped?
I have no recollection of that.
What about a little boy and girl who befriend the deaf?
I do like to do animation work. That's a lot of fun. I remember Pagemaster. I think I was like pirate number 4 or whatever. Star Trek fans loved it. That years later, they point out that actors from 4 different Star Trek series, I think, are in Pagemaster.
Whoopi Goldberg, yeah.
And Patrick Stewart, I think, is in it.
Patrick Stewart's in it, yeah.
Yeah. And so maybe just 3 different Star Trek series. But someone from the original series, I thought, was in Pagemaster too. Is that am I wrong?
I'll have to
read someone else. In any case, yeah, I did a lot of I gotta tell you, matey, that kind of stuff. I don't remember what I did in it, but it was not to any great distinction. And I don't think I could play the whole movie, and never pick my voice out. I'm sure. But anyway, yes, you've reminded me of a bunch of things that I had that I had gratefully forgotten.
Well, so 230, you're allowed to get a few of them. I mean, being in films and shows with the likes of Johnny Depp, Meg Ryan, Dennis Quaid, Tom Hanks, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tom Cruise, Tim Curry, Macaulay Culkin. My favorite, Martin Short. I grew up watching Three Amigos, Martin Short and Inner Space.
Yes, well, he's a genius, Martin Short. He is. and a really sweet fellow, and makes me laugh like nobody else. I saw him when he was back on Broadway a few years ago. He was on a talk show talking about it, and he goes, well, theater really is my first love. And after that, movies and television. And then after that, I suppose my family. So he really makes me laugh.
I was supposed to go there. Him and Steve Martin were doing a tour together, and I was supposed to go to Manchester. But unfortunately, due to what's happened, I've had to reschedule. They've had to reschedule. Hopefully, they'll be doing it again.
Hopefully they will, because I'm sure that's well worth doing. I even worked with Steve Martin too in one scene in a Joe Dante movie. You just reminded me, called Looney Tunes Back in Action.
With Brendan Fraser.
Yep, he has me shrink wrapped in plastic, I believe. But then they were afraid. They cut it out of the movie because the movie was PG-13, and they didn't want kids, shrink wrapping their friends with plastic wrap. So I think it's only in the DVD bonus features if you want to see me shrink wrapped.
I'll have to order the special edition.
It was terrifying.
It
was a machine that actually wraps things in plastic. So I had a stunt person do it. They got wrapped up, and then they had to cut you out immediately or you would suffocate. So, yeah. And they also stopped it right up here. In 1 second, I'm sitting in a chair. It shrink wraps me and comes right up to here. And then I think they cut the camera. It was terrifying, but looks funny on film. But again, you'll only see it in the bonus features, folks.
There we go. I'll have to hunt down the bonus features of Looney Tunes Back in Action. You're saying, like, with Martin Short, you saw him, on Broadway and things like that. When you do cons and things like that, do you get a chance to go over and talk to everybody and see everybody and reminisce and stuff, or is it just sign this?
I don't know. The last time I saw Martin Short was many, many years ago. I mean, it was probably only 6 or 8 years after we had done Interspace. He was on stage somewhere doing something, and I went and said hello to him. And he remembered me as Cowboy. And of course, in that movie, I had to impersonate him impersonating me, which was one of the fun challenges of playing the role.
With your shirt,
we do see, you make, and then people sort of get to know who you are. Actors that I've always liked, suddenly they know who you are because you've just been around long enough, and you get to chat with them at different events. And then you meet people that you've always admired through these giant conventions, which is fun to go up to someone and say hello. Like David Warner. I love David Warner, and I got to meet him at a convention in Britain. And he was totally gracious and cool. I think it's the only time I bought like 3 autographs in my life, but one of them was, David Warner, because I just wanted to go up and hang with him for a few minutes. So yes, he's so you do meet people that you've admired a great deal, and then you're always surprised that people admire you, that you had no idea that that they were interested in. You meet an actor who is a big Star Trek fan that you just didn't expect that. I mean, like Robin Williams, God rest him, was a huge Trek fan. So the first time I met him, I met him. One thing that's not on my resume is an episode of Mork and Mindy. It's the only time I've ever been fired from a television job because I was too young to play the part. I was supposed to be his exterminator. He and Mindy had gotten married in the last season, and they had bugs in the kitchen. So I come and I spray. And all the other actors, when I auditioned, were 15, 20 years older than me. I was only in my late 20s. And they hired me, and then after a day of doing it, and I got my laughs and everything, but after a day of doing it, they said, "You know what? You're too young for this. When you say the line, if I want to laugh, I'll ask my wife to wear shorts. Your wife would look good in shorts." That's what they told me when they let me go. So they felt they wanted to get an older guy giving him advice who'd been married a long time rather than a peer. So I was let go from that. So when I met Robin years later, I didn't remind him that I'd been fired from his show, because he turned to me and said, I said, "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Williams." And he said, "Oh, doctor, it's an honor." So I was I was with my then young daughter, so they were pretty impressed that Mrs. Doubtfire knew who the hell Dad was.
So the kids, obviously growing up, did they know Star Trek, or was it just like
my kids were, when Voyager premiered, my younger daughter Gina was 4.5, and my older daughter was just about 7. And I thought they sort of understood that Dad was an actor, but Gina, when she watched it, what was most disturbing about seeing her father on television was that he was so mad all the time, because the doctor never smiled. So she would go, "Daddy's so mad. Why are you so mad?" And then she loved the episode early on where my program malfunctions and I'm shrunk down the size of like a trash can. She loved that. She went, "Daddy, get small. Daddy, get small. Do it, Daddy. Do it." like it was a trick that I had hidden from her, that I had this capability. But my older daughter, who was 7, I thought she understood what I did for a living, until one day she said, "Daddy, why do you have to drive to Paramount? Why doesn't why do you have to go to the studio? Why doesn't Voyager just fly over our house and beam you aboard every day?" And I said, I think you should come visit the set. You know, and my job, this is another funny story about the kids being young. My older daughter Nikki, when I was doing a military drama called China Beach, she was only about 3.5 years old. And you know, when Daddy comes home from work, you know, it's a Daddy, and she'd run to the door. Well, on China Beach, I wore a hairpiece. So what I would do is I would come home, kiss my kid, and then take my hair off. And I thought, my poor child's going to think that every father's hair is detachable. She's going to be visiting her friends and, you know, pulling on her friend's father's hair, thinking, "Why take it off? Why doesn't it come off?" You know, because the kids assume that your parents are like everybody's parents. So, but apparently she learned at a young age that not all men had detachable hair, which was pretty cool.
I mean, when you speak to people at conventions and things like that, do they just want to speak to you about Voyager, or do you get people saying, you know, Johnny Cab from Total Recall, or you're the guy who, you know, made out with a gremlin at the end?
I would say I get a lot of, you know, I mean, Star Trek is the main attraction. And then I'm the only actor who played regular roles on the other franchise, Stargate. If I'm ever on a Star Wars cartoon, I will have made the trifecta. So I'm hoping that happens someday. Or I'm on The Mandalorian. That would be cool. But in the meantime, I've done 2 of the major 3, you know, science fiction franchises that are American born. I know I haven't done Doctor Who, which it would be a real kick to be on. I said for years I would love to do a cameo on Doctor Who, where the doctor of the moment would just simply bump into me, and I would say, "Excuse me, doctor," and they'd say, "Thank you, doctor," or something, and that would be it. Just 1 second, I thought would jar everyone out of their chairs to see that.
Hey, Red Dwarf's back. We could always get you on Red Dwarf.
Red Dwarf, I've met him. The original television hologram. Yeah, a lovely man. I have pictures together when we met at a convention, and but I would say people ask the most. Really, The Howling is also way up there. Yeah. People are obsessed with that movie. In fact, when one of our producers on Star Trek, Brandon Braga, realized that I had played that character that had so scared him as a young man, Eddie Quist, then he immediately wrote a Voyager episode that was like a Jekyll and Hyde episode called The Darkling, because he wanted me to get a chance to be scary again. So, you know, so I would say that people after Star Trek, it is Johnny Cab and probably The Howling are the next tier. And then after that, Gremlins 2. And then after that, some of my animated work, you know, playing Amazo on the original Justice League and all that, characters like that.
Which one do you like more? Acting in person, or do you like doing the voiceovers? Because now obviously you're doing the Call of Duties as well, the computer games. Now you've moved on to computer games as well.
Mm-hmm. I've been in a bunch of Call of Duties.
Robert Mario in the Call of Duties. Do you like doing the voiceover work? Because you don't have to.
It's fun. It's fun to do everything. Call of Duty, they call me their good luck charm. They say I'm the only actor that's been in all of the Black Ops ones. And I really, you know, it's fun to the Shadow Man, the character that's strictly that, you know, I've done some motion capture work on Call of Duty. I've played characters, but then I also do the Shadow Man, which is it's just a voiceover. job for me. I didn't do the reference performance of the guy. So it's really a pleasure to do everything. It's almost 2 years ago now, I did a musical in New York. I hadn't been on a New York stage in a long time. So it's fun to be able to do it all. And one of the reasons I'm back in New York was I had hoped to reinvigorate a theater career. And then, of course, the pandemic in shutting down the whole world, we don't know exactly when theater will come back, because especially in New York, you're sitting, your mouth is 10 inches from the mouth next to you laughing. So it's going to take some very successful, distribution of vaccines and all that before people feel comfortable sitting in close quarters in a theater again. I mean, I know that they can thin out the audience, but it's just not financially feasible to have Broadway shows and only fill the house, 60%. I don't see that happening. I think, so it's going to take a little longer.
The world has to get back to normal eventually, hopefully. Like I said, I mean, it's great being in 2021, with all the streaming and, people have laptops, phones, you can watch anything, anywhere now. The National Theatre, the British National Theatre, they're doing live streams of their performances and things like that, but it's just not the same. You have to be in the cinema, be in the theatre, you have to be there at the concert to really appreciate it. I don't think it's especially, like, it's going to sound stupid, but things like Space Jam, the new Space Jam film, the Looney Tunes film, things like that, those are the ones that I can't wait to see on the big screen. It's just not the same.
Right, absolutely. You want to, it's not just live theater, it's being in movie theaters again, of course. And for example, all the Jim Cameron, the sequels to Avatar, which I'm sure are going to be huge. You have to see a movie like that. You have to see it on the big screen or in IMAX or whatever. So there's a lot of really exciting work coming out that in film too that you really want to see on a big screen. And I should mention that two summers in a row, I was at the Edinburgh Festival recently. I think 17 and 18, and had just the best time there. It was fun to do a play with my friend Sylvester McCoy, the Doctor Number 6, I believe.
I met him at Wales Comic Con. Yeah, he's amazing. Really nice guy.
Really nice guy. And I work with two different other actors, Johnny Bett, and did one production, and then I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name. How terrible. Anyway, I had just the best experience working the two successive Edinburgh festivals. And then on another note, yesterday I got invited to a convention that's postponed in Britain, spring of 2022. So I will be back in Britain, all God willing and everything in the spring of about a year from now.
We'll be down to see you. We'll definitely be down to see you. I'll bring my daughter along. She can get all the stuff signed off you. Guys, I want to say a massive thank you to Robert Picardo taking the time. In this day and age, what a legend. Like I said, a career spanning over 6 different decades, but he'll always be the Doctor from Voyager for us. Thank you very, very much, Robert.
Thank you, Gerard. It's been a pleasure. Stay healthy and well, and I hope to see you in about a year. All right?
Thank you very much, Robert. Take care.
Take care.